Well, hello, all you lovely people. Professor Gray here, and it's week number 2. How are you guys doing? I hope you're okay. This is kind of hard doing it this way because usually, I'm in a classroom and I can see how you all are doing, and hopefully you're still got a little energy and excitement this early in the semester, and we aren't getting, too tired yet, though I'm exhausted already, so your guys are probably even worse. Well, I hope your first week went well. Hope your second week keeps going. I should probably, draw your attention to the fact that this week is when the first exam's going to go out and will be due on Sunday. I will post a short video about the exams later in the week just to give you a sense about that and a little guidance on how to go forward with that. Yeah, I know. So maybe this week isn't going to be so good after all. I'm sorry. That's what they pay me to do, torture you all, I guess. Sorry. Anyhow, as always, before we dive into the new material for this week, I want to just do a quick little review and maybe do a little quick introduction for the material in this module on understanding arguments. All right, well, so last week, in the last couple modules, we've been talking about this quote from Socrates, the idea that ethics is no small thing. It's about how we ought to live our lives. And so we're talking about ethics is about life. Ethics is about living that life. Ethics is about us living together. We aren't hermits. We aren't alone. We have to deal with other people all the time. And how do we do that? How should we do that? This is something, as I mentioned, makes ethics inescapable. It is something we don't have the privilege to ignore. And this also makes ethics then something profoundly personal, leading to, what ought I do? What ought I do? The practical question, the most practical of practical questions, because it is about action and doing something, not just sitting in an ivory tower and thinking, but actually doing something. And we saw then last week how ethics is something that's inherently normative because it is about what we ought to be doing. It is about making prescriptions. It is about what you should be doing. It's about making evaluations. What is good, what is bad. These are intimately linked together, this evaluating and prescribing. That's all normative. However, we've also seen this is different from the descriptive fields like psychology or sociology or history or the natural sciences. Those are all descriptive, remember, just telling us what is the case, where in ethics, we are concerned about what ought to be the case at the very least. And we saw last week how ethics is different from the law, and maybe those same arguments that Weinstein made against the law being, or the arguments he made that law is different from ethics, we might also then apply to your mom's advice. Look, we love our mom. At least I hope you do. I love my mom anyway. But, her advice isn't necessarily always right. Don't tell her I said that. She'll call me with my phone ringing already. I heard my ears are burning. I love my mom. But, our parents' advice isn't always the right thing. And so maybe the Weinstein's arguments against the law being the same as ethics also applies to your parents. I'm sure you can see why aesthetics, the study of art and beauty, is probably slightly different from ethics, though also normative, because it's a ugly, beautiful, or very normative, evaluative language. And in a few weeks, we'll talk about religion and the connection between religion and ethics, and see maybe that religion is, while connected to ethics, still might have some profoundly important differences. And so we'll talk about that going forward as well. Of course, the major challenge we have seen with ethics is how do we justify these claims? How do we resolve disagreements about ethics? Because if it were in psychology or a natural science or any of the other descriptive fields, there seem to be established methods and processes for resolving disagreements or for justifying claims being made in those descriptive areas. But in ethics, that's tough, right? How do we resolve disagreements? How do we justify our claims? And what we saw last week, I guess, is that we were talking about moral reasoning as the way to deal with these things. Remember, moral reasoning just says the right thing to do has the best reasons for doing it. Again, moral reasoning, the right thing to do has the best reasons for doing it. That is the essence of moral reasoning. And as we saw, that breaks down into two parts. The idea being is that in moral reasoning, first, we are or ought to be prepared to justify our claims in ethics. Someone can say to us why, and we don't take that as an insult. We think, yeah, that's a reasonable question, and here's why or how I'm going to justify that claim. So that is part one. We are prepared or ought to be prepared to justify our claims in ethics. Part two was then we feel free to ask others to justify their claims. So if they say something, we are free, and we don't feel weird about it, saying why. And nor should we feel weird. If someone's telling you to do something, it seems that the least they owe you is a reason. And something I did not say last time, but I will just literally just popped into my head just now, is what I might emphasize. We've talked about this give or take. When I make a claim, I'm prepared to answer the why if you ask me why. Similarly, I expect the same courtesy from you, is that if you make a claim, then I am allowed to ask you why as well. And that's a very fundamental notion of what we might call reciprocity. But also we might think, if we want to think even more philosophical than perhaps we already are, I think this is pretty philosophical, but is that how else can equals deal with each other? If you and I are truly morally equal, none of us was ordained by nature or by God or whatever. You know, I don't have gold skin, you don't have gold skin. None of us has been clearly ordained to be the ruler or the dominant person. Well, how else can moral equals deal with each other? It seems wrong to lie, cheat, and force each other. It seems that moral reasoning is the only way for equals to deal with each other. And that's an important, I think, idea that might be lurking about why moral reasoning needs to be or ought to be I'm spinning again. And that one went right at the camera, gross. But again, that might be why we care about moral reasoning, because how else can equals deal with things? It has to be through giving each other reasons. Being free to ask why. And so we're already seeing that moral reasoning obviously is the bedrock for ethics. It's going to take us in lots of different directions. And so in this unit, this module, we're going to be talking about, argumentation, because that's what the process is going to be about. The give and take of reasons, that's argumentation as we understand this. And so to walk you through these ideas about how arguments work in ethics, I've got a nice video. It's a cute little video from PBS's Crash Courses in Philosophy. It's got a nice, very introduction to just saying, what's an argument? Why are arguments very important in philosophy? I think it does a great job of that. And I don't think it takes much imagination to see why then the same things about arguments in philosophy also applies to arguments in ethics. Well, ethics is part of philosophy, so that probably isn't too mysterious. So when you watch that video, focus on why are arguments so important in philosophy? Why are arguments, for the same reason, so important in ethics? And I've given you kind of my take on it. It's different from his. My take, again, this is how equals reason with each other, or how equals deal with each other. We don't use force or fraud or lies and cheat and steal. Equals don't do that to each other. Equals respect one another and are willing to give and take reasons. After that video from PBS, I have a couple videos. There are going to be slideshows because this is a very visual thing. You don't need to see me. You need to see the arguments that I'll be doing. And we'll teach you some very, I hope, simple techniques for analyzing arguments that will allow you to distinguish the parts and arrange the parts in a sense. So after the PBS video, you'll have one video from me talking about just what is an argument, what are the parts of an argument, how do we distinguish those parts of an argument from each other. That's my first video. And then the second video I'll share with you for me is about how to take those parts of an argument and arrange them into what's called an argument diagram or an argument map that allows us to visualize the structure of an argument. I'm not going to go crazy with this because I understand this is not a class in logic, but I figure this might be a useful tool for you to make use of. So I hope that's useful. I'll also post in the if you want some more section, I'll post just a problem set of lots of arguments that you are then free to to parse and diagram for yourself, and I'll include the solutions. You don't have to do it. I'll just say that people who don't get this, it's usually because you haven't practiced. There's really no substitute for really getting good at breaking apart arguments is just practicing. Because you watch the videos, I suspect some of it will be mysterious until you actually sit down and try to do some. I won't force you to do it. But I would encourage you, if you're struggling with what I'm saying, to practice a bit and then look at the answers. And I think that's how it usually works. But of course, if that doesn't help, feel free to send me an email and we can chat over Zoom about it. All right. Well, anyhow, let's take a quick break then. Oh, that one wasn't 10 minutes. I'm still doing these reviews too long. Oh, well, that means my other videos will be shorter. I hope you noticed that I do try to compensate. Anyhow, let's take that quick break. And then once you're back, you can learn about arguments and philosophy from Mr. Green. Say hi to him for me. It's a rather cute little video. All right. I'll see you back here after that.